What's up everybody and welcome to a new video. And in this video we're gonna go over my notes for the panel. So what is the panel? It's an extra space below the editor region for additional views. And you can open and close it, for example, via these layout controls here. You can also use the command palette. So here simply search for toggle panel. So this command here. And with that you can also toggle it off again. And then lastly, you can also simply drag up the sashes of the panel. So this is how you can open and close the panel. Okay, so now let's get to the second point here, which is about the default views. And they are the problems view, the output view, the debug console, the terminal, and then lastly the ports view. So let's start with the problems view. Namely, as the name implies, what this does is it displays all the identified problems, i.e. all the infos, warnings and errors. And here next to the heading, you can see a number indicating the total number of problems for all opened editors. So currently only this notes.md file is opened, and here we have now 100 problems. However, if I now here open file 1, then you can see now we have 103 problems. And if I also open here file 2, now we have 106. Okay, so now let's get to the second point, which states that problems are either ordered by file if you use the tree view. And here we are currently using the tree view. And as you can see, the problems are ordered by file 1, file 2, and here notes.md. Or the problems could also be ordered by type of problem when you use the table view. And you can activate that with this button here. And then here you can see that the problems are ordered by type of problem. So first the errors are listed, which are indicated with this red circle here. Then the warnings, which are indicated with this yellow triangle. And then lastly the infos, which are represented by this blue circle here. And then the listed details for each problem are as follows. Namely, first the actual problem is stated. So for example, in this case here, expected indented block. Then after that, the extension or the linter is stated, which detected the problem. So in this case, then pylons. And then lastly, the location of the problem is stated with the line number and the column number. And if you click here, one of those problems, then VS Code will jump to the respective file and then to the respective problem. So if I click this here, then we jump to file 1 and here to the print statement. And if I click this problem, then we go to file 2 and then to this hello world example. And then here the last point that I want to mention is that sometimes when you hover here over a problem, then you see this yellow light bulb. And this indicates that there is a quick fix available. And we talked about quick fixes when we talked about the editor, namely then here in code editing, code actions, and then here the quick fixes. So I will put a link into the video description to this video where we talked about this. Okay, so now let's go back to our problems view. And here the last point is about the toolbar. So here's the toolbar, and here first you have an input field to filter the problems, and here you can filter for just text. So if I filter for pi, for example, then you can see that there are only problems here that somehow contain pi. And hereby it doesn't matter if this pi is within the actual stated problem, or if it is within the file name or within the extension or linter that detected the problem. But here, however, you can also just filter for file type. So for example, if I put in here asterisk.py, then here we are only considering Python files. So then here you also have some options, some filtering options. Here you can toggle on off showing errors, warnings or infos. So for example, if I toggle the infos off, then here no infos are shown. And then here the other option is to show active file only. So if I toggle this on, then the problems of the active file are only shown. So in this case here, notes.md is active, so that's why only notes.md is shown. If I go to file 2, then the problems of file 2, and then if I go to file 1, then the problems of file 1. Okay, so then here the last option is to show excluded files. And this refers to the files exclude setting. And we talked about that in the context of the Explorer, and here more specifically in the context of hidden files and folders. So if you want to know more about that, you can check out the video where we talked about that. So I will put the link to that also into the video description. And for now, let me just show you what this option here does. So therefore, let me open the settings. And here, let's simply search for files, exclude. And here now, let's add the pattern to exclude markdown files. So we use this pattern here, let's add it. And right now, nothing changes, but that's because this is still toggled on. So let's toggle this off. Then we will see that this notes.md file is not considered anymore. And now let's simply remove this pattern here again. And then you will see it's again here shown. Okay, so those are the different filtering options that you have. And then next here in the title bar, in the toolbar, is this collapse all button. So with that you can simply here collapse everything in this problems view. And then here we have a button to toggle between the view as table and view as tree, which we've already seen. And then lastly here we have a button to maximize the panel and minimize it, and then here to hide. And those last two options here are actually available for all the toolbars in these different views. Okay, so those are the notes that I have for the problems view. Okay, so then the next view is the output view. And what that does is it displays the status messages and logs from extensions and from VS Code itself. i.e. with that you can investigate the internal operations of extensions and VS Code. And this is especially useful for troubleshooting any issues or bugs. Okay, so now let's go over the toolbar again. And here you also have an input box to filter the output. So for example, if you type here in mini, then you can see it filters the output accordingly. Then here you also have some filtering options where you can then toggle off what you want to see. So if you want to, maybe you don't want to see the info and so on. And then next to that, you have then a drop-down list where you can specify the output source. So for example, if you want the output from Python extension or from Jupyter or from Git or from tasks, then next to that, you have a button to clear the output. Then here you can turn on auto scrolling, or you can also turn it off. So for example, if I type here something, then you will see that some output is created and this output automatically scrolls. However, if I turn this then off, so if I then again type something here, then you see that it's not scrolling, even though some more output was generated. Okay, so this is the auto scrolling feature. Then after that, we have this gear icon, and here with that you can set the log level. So you can set it from the most verbose to the least verbose, or you can also just turn it off. And then lastly, here in this overflow menu, you can open the output in the editor, for example, or you can open it in a new window. Here you can then save the output or export and import the logs. And here you can add a compound log. So with that you can combine multiple output sources. So for example, if I use here, for example, Git and Python, and if I select that, now I have here the output for both of these sources. And this will then again go away if you then close VS Code and then reopen it. Okay, so that are my notes for the output view. Okay, so then the next view is the Debug Console. And we've already talked about the Debug Console, namely in the context of the debugger. Then here basic functionality, and then here using the Debug Console. So again, I will put a link to that video into the video description. Okay, so now let's go back to the notes for the panel. And here the next view is the terminal. And what that does is it provides an integrated terminal, i.e. you don't have to use an external terminal. And as you can see, this opens in the location of the workspace. Okay, so now let's go over the toolbar. Here with this first option, you can see the name of the terminal, and if you hover over it, then you get this additional information here. And if you click it, then you get to open this context menu. And here the first option is to split the terminal, and we will look at that in a moment. Then here with the next command, you can move the terminal into the editor area. And if you want to move it back, you can right click the tab and then here move terminal into panel. And here, just as a side note, you could also just drag and drop the terminal into the editor area. So then the next command is to move the terminal into a new window. So here again, if you want to move back, right click the tab and then move terminal into panel. Then here the next commands or options, with that you can customize the terminal. So for example, you can change the color, you can change the icon, and you can rename it. So let's call this simply test. And then here the next option is called toggle size to content width. And to show you what that does, let me open here the secondary sidebar and make the terminal a little bit narrower. And now let's add here a very long command. And here then, as you can see, if the command is too long for the space here, then it goes to the next line. And if you don't want that behavior, then you can use this command here. So if I click this, and sometimes for whatever reason, it doesn't seem to be working. So I don't know if that's a bug or if I'm doing something wrong. Okay, so now the command is depicted on just one line, and then you get here a very narrow horizontal scroll bar at the bottom. So with that command here, you can toggle between using this horizontal scroll bar or toggling the size to the content width. Okay, so that is that option. So let's close the secondary sidebar, and then here lastly we have the option to kill the terminal, and here again we will look at that in a moment. So then the next option in the toolbar is this plus sign, and with that you can create a new terminal. And if you have multiple terminals open, then you get here on the right hand side this list of terminals, and then you can simply click the terminal to get the respective terminal. And here you can also then simply rearrange those terminals simply by dragging and dropping. So if I move test to here or at the bottom, then you can rearrange those terminals in this way. Then the next option here is this drop down arrow next to the plus sign, and with that you can create a different type of terminal. So for example, if I wanted to create a command prompt, then it creates a command prompt. And the available types here depend on what shells are installed on your system. So then here another command that I want to show is this select default profile. And what that does is, with that you can select what type of terminal should be created when clicking this plus sign. So for example, right now if I click it, then it creates a git bash. So now if we change that, for example, if we change it to a command prompt, then if I now click that, then it creates a command prompt. And then here another command I want to show is this configure terminal settings. So what that does is it simply opens the settings, filter down to settings related to the terminal. Okay, so then next we have here the command split terminal. So with that you can then have simply multiple terminals next to each other in this terminal view. And if you want to unsplit them again, simply right click the terminal and then here unsplit terminal. And just as a side note, here what you also could do is simply drag the terminal into this terminal view. So this way you can also have multiple terminals next to each other. Okay, so then lastly we have here this kill terminal command. And here just as a side note, if you have multiple terminals open, then the split terminal and kill terminal command are available when you hover over the respective terminal. So let's kill this terminal here. And then lastly, here in the overflow menu, you can clear the terminal, scroll to next or previous command, run active file or run selected text. Okay, so that's the toolbar. So now let's go over the side notes. And the first one is about shell integration. Namely, VS Code has the ability to integrate with common shells, and this enables additional features. So for example, one of the features is our command decorations. So this is the start here in front of the prompt, or it's also shown here in the overview ruler. And what these decorations do is they indicate execution status. So this gray hollow circle here, or this gray hollow dot, indicates that it's either waiting for a command or that the command is currently running. And to show for the case that it's currently running, I've prepared here some code. So let's run this file here in the terminal. So let's say Python file1, and then let's run it. And then here, as you can see, as the code is running, it's this gray circle, and then when it's done, it's now this blue circle, and this blue circle indicates that the command was successful. So now let's show what happens when the command is not successful. So let's simply type something. So then you have this red dot. Or you can, as I just said here, you also see that in this overview ruler. Okay, so then when you hover over such a decoration, then you can see when the command was executed and how long it took. And if you click it, then you can see command actions. And via the settings, you can adjust those decorations. So therefore, let's open the settings. And here simply search for terminal decorations. So here you can either just use them or display them in the gutter, just in the overview ruler, or turn them completely off. So that are the command decorations. Then you have here the command guide, and the command guide is simply this vertical bar here left to the command and the command output, and that lets you simply or more easily identify a specific command and its respective output. And you can disable that via the settings. So here simply search for terminal guide. Then here, if you turn this off, then it's not showing anymore. Okay, so that is the command guide. And then lastly, we have here sticky scroll. You can enable that via the settings. So simply search for terminal sticky scroll, and here you can then enable it. And what that does is it sticks the command or the current command at the top of the terminal. And this is useful for commands with long output. So for example, if I type here git -h, then we have here a command with long output. So now if you would want to see to what command this output here belongs, then you would need to scroll up again and then see, okay, it's git -h. However, when you enable sticky scroll, then the command is simply sticked here at the top. And then you can also click it to quickly jump to the respective command. Okay, so those are some of the example features that you can get with shell integration. So then the next side note is this find functionality, and you can access it with Control F. So if I press here Control F, then this window here opens, and this is basically the same as the one that we've already talked about when we talked about the editor, code navigation, and then here search within file. So I will put a link to that video into the video description if you want to know more about that. But now, to quickly show that here, let's simply search for work. And then here you can see all those matches. So that's the find functionality. So then the next side note states that all text in the terminal output is clickable with Control click. So for example, if I run the command ls, and then here if I click file 2, then VS Code jumps to file 2, and if I click here Control click this folder, then it jumps here to the folder. But you can't just click files and folders, you can really click any text. So therefore, to show that, I have prepared here some code. So let's copy this and then run this file in the terminal. And then here I have a URL. So if I control click that, then it opens that URL. And here, if I just control click this word, what happens is that VS Code search for any files in the workspace that somehow contain the word or the letters of that word. Okay, so that's this side note. Then next we have here this setting, which is about right-click behavior. So if you open here the settings and search for that, then here you can adjust the right-click behavior. So you can use copy, paste, select word or nothing. So that's the setting. And then lastly, here we have these advanced topics, which are about terminal customization and terminal profiles. So here I just provided the respective links. Okay, so with that now we have covered all the side notes. And with that, then we have covered all the notes that I want to cover with respect to the terminal. Okay, so then the last view is the ports view. And this enables port forwarding. So here I've inserted a link where you can get more information. But basically what it does is when running a local web service, you can use the ports view to make the service accessible to others over the internet. Okay, so with that now, we have covered all the points that I wanted to cover with respect to the default views. Okay, so now let's go over the side note here. And that simply states that additional views might be added by extensions. So for example, I've installed here this Jupyter extension. And now if I open a Jupyter notebook, then you will see that we now have here this Jupyter view. Okay, so that is already the side note. And with that now we've covered all the notes that I wanted to cover with respect to the panel. So then in the next video, we will go over the notes for the status bar. So thanks for watching and hopefully I will see you in the next video.